For the past year, 24 CCTV cameras have been watching over Swansea's CBD. The Chamber of Commerce believes they're making a difference, but their future is in jeopardy because they were installed without council approval.
The council really want to take them out and go through DAs and all kinds of ridiculous things. They're already in place, they're working. It's just an unnecessary thing to take them out and put them back in again.
The member for Swansea says he sought advice from State Parliament, which indicated there was no impediment to installing them.
Why put the chamber through red tape, through additional costs for something that's already there, something the community wanted and something that the community are now extremely happy with?
The rules are the rules. Everyone has to comply, whether they're a business, whether they're an MP, whether they're an everyday person.
Mayor Jodie Harrison says at no stage has council told businesses to remove the cameras.
I'm actually at a complete loss as to why this in the last couple of days has become an issue as it has.
Discussions are continuing. Renee Feder, NBN News.
It's being removed under world-class best practice standards. There are occupational hygienists on site and there's an independent person here monitoring the entire process.
It wasn't a result suited for a reigning Melbourne Cup champion. Protectionist, in its first competitive run since arriving at the Chris Lee stable, struggled in the Peter Young Stakes over 1,800 metres. The middle distance run, off the back of a spell, in the end, all too much. Half an hour earlier at Warwick Farm, its stablemate Lucia Valentina went around in the Chipping Norton Stakes. A slow start made the going tough as it rounded the final turn. But it was the John O'Shea train contributor that saluted the line. One of Lee's other runners, Marple Miss, also fell short of finishing in the placings in the Angus Armanasco Stakes, despite winning its last 3 starts. He also had 2 charges in the Liverpool City Cup over 1,300 metres with thump and slow pace, which was showing good signs early. Thump, ridden by Ty Anglin, positioned well with 200 to go. But the pair's chances faded closer to the line in an afternoon to forget for Chris Lees. Michael Kane, NBN News.
Residents in this quiet Cessnock street woke to the sound of screams for help. At 1 this morning, police arrived at the home in Edgeworth Street to find a 48-year-old man with multiple stab wounds. They immediately began CPR, but he died at the scene. Another woman was home at the time.
Our initial inquiries indicate that this is a domestic situation between two males and a female.
A short time after, the incident took an unexpected turn. A 49-year-old man allegedly lost control of the car he was driving and rolled straight into the crime scene.
Police found that person to have multiple injuries, some of which we believe to be self-inflicted. That person was conveyed to John Hunter Hospital, where he's currently under police guard.
After he's undergone surgery, police say they'll formally interview him and charge him with murder. Today, the investigations continued, with forensics and detectives remaining on scene for most of the day gathering evidence. Residents say the victim, who lived at this residence, was a quiet man who mostly kept to himself, and it's the first time there's been any trouble in this street. Vivian von Drainen, NBN News. The face of Maitland is changing, and thanks to Resources for Regions funding, the city's revitalisation can continue. Today, the state government announced $9.9 million for the second stage of the levee project.
It's actually the icon of this project. It will be the feature that we believe will draw people into the city centre and create that connectivity with the river that we've been chasing for so long.
The plans show a plaza that will link High Street to the riverbank, new public spaces, a cafe and cycleway. But to make way for the development, 3 single-storey buildings need to be acquired by council.
There are 2 of the 3 remaining to be purchased, but we're well down the path of negotiation with the property owners involved.
The announcement is one last hurrah for outgoing Maitland MP Robin Parker.
Well, 4 years ago, when I was the candidate wanting to be the member for Maitland, I committed to revitalising the Maitland CBD. It's going to bring people into town. It really is going to make this the heart of Maitland.
Construction of the first stage is due to be complete by the end of this week, in time for the city's Taste Festival.
We're assured by the contractor that he is on track to do that, so full steam ahead.
Work on the second stage will begin in the second half of the year. Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
It'll give them a whole sort of more exposure to a beautiful recreational area. You know, people can fish from here, they can swim from here. It's just brilliant.
The Carnivale spirit was alive and well in Hamilton today. This year there was a name change, with organisers wanting to bring a multicultural feel to the festival.
It's certainly taken on quite an interesting angle, bringing in a lot of community groups, which is exactly what we wanted to do. They want to be involved and we want them involved, and this is what keeps us going.
There was plenty to see, buy and eat. Small business owners welcomed revellers, but this month's state election wasn't far from their minds. They'll have the chance to question candidates at a forum on Wednesday at the Gallipoli Club.
Get together, bring the politicians there, Karen Howard, Tim Crackenthorpe, particularly to ask the questions of what are the concerns, particularly with small business here in our area, and see what they have to say.
When I'm out talking to the community, jobs is the number one concern, and unemployment's doubled in Newcastle in the last 12 months.
Karen Howard says she's looking forward to rubbing shoulders with the business community.
Can talk to me about what's happening in small business and how our government can help, and I think Labor's plan for funding infrastructure by a $7,500 tax on every business in New South Wales is just a disgrace.
Meredith Gibbs, NBN News.
For many Novocastrians, it's part of the morning ritual, a flick through the paper to see what Lewis will come up with today. An accomplished artist, he's been the resident cartoonist at the Newcastle Herald since 1986. 29 years. How many cartoons? Do you even know?
I would speculate that it's about 9,500.
And every one of them has started the same way, with a spark of inspiration.
It's the idea, everything is about the idea. And that takes time. It might take a microsecond. It might take 4 or 5 hours.
Local issues are his main fodder, Newcastle's train line debate and the recent shark scares among the standouts. Politicians come under close and frequent scrutiny, like Mike Baird.
No, Mike is actually a problem because he is too nice looking. Ugly people are easy.
Tony Abbott.
Oh, he's just a gift that keeps on giving. I mean, he reminds me of a monkey. I hate to say it, but most people remind me of different animals.
But Julia Gillard was his favourite.
She came in one day and I was introduced to her before I even knew what was happening. I was standing there with a coffee cup in my hand. And so I had nothing. I should have just said, "Oh, very nice to meet you," and walked off. Yep. But instead I engaged in conversation. And she said, talked about the way people draw her nose. And like an idiot, I followed that line of conversation.
Peter Lewis readily admits his cartoons push boundaries and readers' buttons. But that's the whole point.
When you're doing cartoons, you don't want to swim between the flags all the time. You want to really push it out a bit. Because sometimes society gets things wrong, and the social commentator's job is to look outside society and look back at society and say, well, I think this is not quite right.
It can be controversial work. The recent Charlie Hebdo shooting in Paris cast a shadow on the role of cartoonists. Peter Lewis says it was a tragedy, but not altogether a surprise.
I wouldn't do a cartoon like the Charlie Hebdo cartoons. I'm not a person who offends just for the sake of it. In fact, I'm not really a person who enjoys insulting or offending people. I prefer to use humour as a means of engagement.
Chad Watson is the 11th editor Peter has worked with at the Herald.
We've got to get him talking, mate.
He says Peter's cartoons make a unique and important contribution.
Peter is a fine illustrator, but I think his best gift is his insightfulness. With a few brushstrokes and a carefully plotted line, Lewis can get to the heart of a matter that is often quite complex.
Peter Lewis has a signature style, and careful readers have noticed a common character emerge over the years. Romeo, based on his real-life dog.
I started adding him just out of boredom one day, but everybody liked the dog, and so I'm sort of stuck with him now.
And just in case you're wondering, he really can draw anyone.
Just slightly off centre.
Like that?
Yeah, that's good.
Yep,
okay.
is that better? You've made me look younger. I like that.
The derby was 18 minutes old before the first decent chance. But Liam Reddy was proving tough to beat in the Mariners' goal. The Jets' newest recruit tried to make a name for himself on debut. Newcastle's Ben Kennedy showed his class at the other end. Shortly before the break, a moment of controversy. Replays indicated the Jets may have been shortchanged. The Mariners' best chance after the break fell to Fabio Ferreira. But the disallowed goal would prove the talking point.
They're massive decisions that can make or break results, make or break careers. And in this day and age of technology, I just don't understand why we don't use it.
Phil Moss then made no apology for leaving John Hutchinson on the bench on a night where he would have set a new record for A-League appearances.
You know, he's all about the team, he's not about himself, and he took the decision on the chin, and he'll get his record, and he'll break the record in the next few weeks, I've got no doubt about that.
The redevelopment of the Esplanade forced organisers to change the bike leg for the Spark Helmore NBN Triathlon. Following 7 torturous laps from Nobbies to King Edward Park, Michelle Gailey had edged in front in the women's division, but it was the defending men's champion Shane Ilgen who was the first into the running shoes. Despite carrying an injury from a cycling accident, 16-year-old Caleb Agostino Morrow was in hot pursuit. Gailey was the first woman to enter the run leg, but Ilgen was the man to beat, as the 20-year-old went on to score a comfortable victory. In just over 1 hour and 57 minutes.
It was pretty much what I expected, but I was nervous about the race today. I knew it wouldn't be a definite win today.
Agostino Morrow grabbed second, with Gailey taking out the women's event.
Yeah, it was really good. Everyone's real friendly and nice course.
And you're insane? You're going back out to do another one?
Yeah, I'm off to do the sprint now, so I got to run.
The idyllic countryside along the Williams River near Dungog has long been the centre of controversy. In 2010, the Labor government pulled the pin on the Tilligra Dam, and since then the site's future has been in limbo. But Hunter Waters says not anymore. It's put the land earmarked for the $477 million project on the market again.
There are enough other options on the table to ensure we have sustainable water supplies for the next 20 plus years. This land is not required for a dam, and it should be returned to the community.
It's welcome news for Dungog's mayor.
It's been a long, hard struggle, hasn't it? But here we are. The sword's back in the cupboard.
He wants to see it restored to prime agricultural land.
For the first time for decades, we have certainty on this part of the Shire. Certainty that the dam's not going to be built and we can get on with redeveloping a community.
While offers have been made to former property owners, only one has expressed interest in returning. It's hoped the sales will trigger a business and employment boom for the region.
Whatever comes of this land, it will be productive. There will be families back here in the valley.
Hunter Water originally bought the land for about $90 million. Now it's worth an estimated $60 million. It says funds will be put back into water infrastructure projects. Lauren Kelly, NBN News. Bob Hawes became embroiled in claims of corruption and a conflict of interest when it was revealed he owned a stake in this Beresford Street site opposite Wickham Railway Station. Last week, the ICAC found that while the conflict of interest was apparent and he may benefit financially from the rail line's truncation, there was no evidence of corrupt conduct. Mr Hawes sold the site about a month ago to Third Eye Group, and agents are already registering interest in the 64 apartments within an 8-storey building.
The Huxley is the first development of its kind since the rail has been cut. It's going to give an opportunity for mums and dads and children to just flow straight onto the foreshore.
And with the rail line truncated and the old Wickham station to go, they believe the apartments have become more valuable.
Yes, they will be, simply because it's improving the lifestyle. And therefore, you know, the land value of all up and down where the railway line is going to increase in value.
Just on the noise factor and just general rumbling of trains, it's excellent to have that removed from the city.
More units along the former rail line are expected to pop up this year, including the 71 apartment development known as The Addition, backing onto the corridor at Honeysuckle. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
In the Hunter, the average cost of cancer treatment for patients is $32,000 a year, a big figure for the more than 3,000 people in the region who are diagnosed with the disease annually. This state election, the Cancer Council has been calling on candidates to support its vision for change, which includes axing chemotherapy co-payments, which is the fee paid every time a new chemotherapy drug is prescribed.
What we know is that there are some people in New South Wales who need to pay a co-payment for the chemotherapy, but others in other states across Australia don't need to pay that.
Now, Labor has come to the table, promising $6.2 million to fund co-payments for patients if elected, saving patients at least $180.
At a time when people are already stressed, they don't need to be stressing further about whether they can afford to pay for their chemotherapy.
More and more we're finding people are struggling to pay for general bills and other household expenses while they're setting aside their finances to pay for medicine or to pay for treatment.
2 years ago, Cardiff resident Donna Gordon started a 12-month battle with breast cancer. She estimates she paid about $400 in co-payments.
It'll just be a huge relief, not just to the patient but the family as well. I think because that's one, you're off sick work-wise, so the financial burden is a strain. So this is great news.
Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
The official build-up to round one has finally begun.
Turned up today knowing we're on this weekend, and I think that the vibe was around the place. So, everyone's excited.
Bo Scott was in the spotlight for another reason at training as he prepares to appear in a new fishing series.
Yeah, definitely a new experience for me being in front of the camera, but enjoying it.
Coach Rick Stone admits the Warriors star this Saturday will be Golden Boot winner Shaun Johnson.
We know he's a really important cog to their wheel and, to minimise his effect. And it's really a bit of minimising his effect on the game rather than shutting him down altogether.
It wasn't the happiest day at work for Johnson's opposite number, Tyrone Roberts.
Oh, he was in the wars today, Tyrone. He got stood on by Sims, and then he got a poke in the eye, I think, from Sione. So, he's going to be all right. He just had a couple of little mishaps there today.
The makeup of the Knights bench is still up for debate among the coaching staff. But the biggest headache is choosing between Sione Matautia and Joey Leilua in the centres. Stone hasn't ruled out selecting them both in his final 17.
They're two quality players, and one of the things you're asked to do as a coach is get your best 17 players out there as often as you can, and get them in the contest. So that'll be one we'll definitely consider.
If you were to carry one of them on the bench, does that mean you don't go with a Tyler?
Fresh from his win in the Georgia Dome last weekend, Chad Reed started with purpose. Despite a handful of challenges, the Australian managed to hang on for the heat victory. His first since 2012.
Somewhere between Christmas and Anaheim, I must have ate way too much cake or something, and it just went sideways, and just hasn't been the season that we thought it would be, and it's taken a long time to grind ourselves way back into it.
In the main event, Reed was on track for career win number 45. On lap 2, he made a rare unforced error. He slipped to 14th position, but eventually climbed back to 7th. Onto four wheels, and Aaron Russell has proved he'll be a contender in the V8 Development Series in 2015. Despite finishing 10th in practice and 12th in qualifying in Adelaide, the Novocastrian motorsport driver was on the move early in race 1. Russell managed to avoid several crashes to edge into 6th. In race 2, he quickly progressed into 4th spot. Proving just how much he loves street circuits, the 23-year-old was 3rd by lap 10. That's where he stayed, moving into 3rd overall in the series.
Flanked by a passionate contingent from the Hunter, Chairman Fred Nile explained the inquiry's recommendations outside Parliament House.
The most important one was to recommend that the railway line be restored, and if they continue with their current policy, the light rail should be on that rail corridor.
He says his committee remains convinced the decision to truncate the rail line was based on a flawed cost-benefit analysis. Among the inquiry's findings, that Hunter Development Corporation CEO Bob Hawes had a significant conflict of interest as a Wickham landowner, and that the board failed to adequately address that, damaging public confidence in HDC. The report suggests Newcastle Council be recognised as principal planning authority for the city, including all land owned by the HDC.
It's a great report and the recommendations are excellent in terms of handing the planning decisions back to Newcastle City Council, in terms of reinstating the rail line.
Established in September last year following revelations in the ICAC, the Upper House Parliamentary Committee held 5 hearings. It also investigated a confidential cabinet document found in the former office of Tim Owen. The report questions why the government ignored the Transport Minister's advice and chose a light rail option which will cost $100 million more. The inquiry also recommends lowering the height limit from 65 metres to 27 metres in the city's east end. A government spokesperson today said the 3 towers on the urban growth and GPT site were amended to not exceed the height of the cathedral in response to community feedback.
They have an obligation to listen and to act, and if they don't, I think many people in Newcastle will be very, very disappointed.
The Liberal National Government must reinstate the rail services that have been cut.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
The services in the Hunter are really feeling the pain of not having a high level of investment, and as a result, young children are missing out on preschool.
Sally Keir had breast cancer in 2003 and 2008. Despite being given a grim prognosis both times, she came out on top. To give back to the science that she says helped her so much, she's taking part in the Hunter Medical Research Institute's latest study that looks into a new MRI scanning technique.
The MRIs are a way of being vigilant that's less invasive than doing multiple mammograms all the time. So I still have mammograms, but I trust the MRI much more.
Dr. David Clark is the study's co-author. During the 12-month trial, the chemical composition of the breasts of women with a high risk of developing cancer were compared to those without the BRCA gene.
What we set out to do was to look at the breast tissue and try and predict which people were going to develop breast cancer and those who weren't. And about 50% of these people with the BRCA gene will never develop breast cancer.
Dr. Clark says the findings will be life-changing.
If this thing works, then a lot of people are not going to have to lose their breasts. It's going to alleviate a lot of anxiety.
It will be another tool that will be used for women to be able to make informed choices, and informed choices based on research and evidence, not based on fear.
And it all started in Newcastle. Vivian von Drainen, NBN News. For the last 4 days, Ron Collins hasn't been able to leave his Newcastle apartment complex. Sometime on Friday night or Saturday morning, his motorised scooter he relies on to get around was stolen from the car park downstairs. He's 68 and after suffering a stroke, he finds it difficult to speak and walk, prompting his Good Samaritan neighbour to try and get back what was taken from him.
It's his life, you know. Any time I ever see Ron out, he's only on his scooter because he can't walk too far, and it's completely changed your life, mate, hasn't it? Yeah. In just 4 days, you know.
The incident has been reported to police, but Ron's red scooter hasn't shown up, which means there's no end in sight to being stuck inside.
That's all I can do. Can't walk.
It's his 100% way of transport, you know. So. Yeah, it's a sad story to know that we live in a world where people are still an elderly man's scooter, you know.
Ron just wants information, or better yet, his scooter back.
It's unfair, and do whatever we can to get him another one.
Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
He's been good, you know, BJ. He's worked pretty hard at getting his weight down and he's looking a lot sharper. He's played a couple of 80-minute games.
After celebrating a crosstown derby win against Western Sydney, the Sky Blues have now set their sights on a jet mission, and the hosts aren't about to become complacent.
I suppose you can be a little bit flat, but we're not going to be expecting that at all. I mean, they're a great team. They've got a lot of depth, a lot of experience as well. So we know that they're going to be ready to go.
One man Newcastle will be looking to keep quiet in Friday night's encounter is the current A-League top scorer, Mark Yanko.
He's starting to play some really good football, so it's going to be something different as well, obviously, with his height.
He's a dangerous man. We've got to make sure Dan and Taylor are on their game and raring to go and make sure they keep him at bay.
History hasn't been kind to the Jets in recent clashes with Sydney, not having won any of their last 5 meetings with the Graham Arnold coach side. But it seems using the width of the park will be the preferred option in a bid to turn that record around.
Some areas, like in their right back and left back positions, where they are a little bit weaker than the rest of the squad, so I think we can look to exploit those areas.
Ben Kanarowski will return to the side after serving a 1-match suspension and believes his club is moving forward.
Yeah, I think you can see that in our results. We're a bit harder to break down, and that's what we've been working on at training, and I think from that we're slowly starting to get some forward movement and some forward play, and that just stems from having good discipline defensively, and from that it gives us something to build on.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
It's long been the biggest hurdle to investing in Newcastle. Filling mine voids beneath the Earth's surface to strengthen a site for development can cost $3 million before construction even begins. The state's treasurer in town today with a $17 million solution.
This is money that is going to go directly into the ground. To fill and stabilise the shafts is really important for growth, and it's been an ongoing issue.
The Property Council of Australia started advocating for change 10 years ago. It says this funding will get projects held back by the issue on the move and create jobs.
There's been countless projects over the years. The feasibility of projects has been scuttled by the issue of mine subsidence. It's the uncertainty of the cost which has really damaged projects.
Our city benefits from more people coming in to live in the city, more opportunity for people to take up office space.
The money will come out of the Hunter Infrastructure Investment Fund and be managed by the Hunter Development Corporation and Mine Subsidence Board. It comes just a day after a parliamentary inquiry into development decisions made in Newcastle handed down its report, recommending the height limit in the city's east end be lowered from 65 metres to 27.
The truth of the matter is that we have taken decisions that I strongly believe in the long-term interests of the City of Newcastle and the region of the Hunter.
I would say this to the Labor Party: run your scare campaigns, but we're going to stare you down.
Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
We're in consultation with the workforce right now. What will come out of that consultation will then be an agreement on how many of those employees have to go.
There's one thing these rallying residents want, and today's state government opposition leader Luke Foley promised to give it to them if his government is elected in March.
In the Hunter, Labor's top commitment, our first commitment in building the schools of tomorrow, is a new high school at Medowie.
And he set aside $40 million out of Labor's A Better Way infrastructure program to pay for it. The school will be built on a state government-owned site next to Aranda Public, land that has been earmarked for the project since 1983.
I've made the commitment here today in front of all of you, on camera, so you'll be able to hold us to it.
Parents say a local high school is desperately needed.
I've got a daughter in Year 7, she started this year obviously, and she has to be on the bus at 7:30 in the morning just to get to Irrawang, which is at Raymond Terrace, 20 minutes away. It's just ridiculous.
We want a high school, quick smart.
Many of the parents of high school age students here at Medowie argue that the lack of a local high school is actually endangering their children's lives by forcing them onto crowded buses for hours every day as they commute to and from distant high schools. In 2010, 2 wheels fell off this bus as it rounded Grahamstown Dam, endangering the lives of 80 Irrawang High students, an accident that still haunts parents.
So, it's scary when you put your child on that bus every day and, you hope that they're coming home safely.
Madeline McKell, NBN News.
The hunter economy has diversified, and I want to continue to support that. So we have a plan, for example, for a convention and exhibition centre.
On the eve of his side's first match, one night's prop has already made someone his target, and it's Warriors enforcer Ben Martellina.
Pick someone out of the side and get into him, and I think this week will probably be that bloke.
Coming up against a forward pack full of size, strength and speed, the red and blue is looking to match the opposition up front.
They're not lacking size and they're very strong, so it's going to be a very hard first game. We're just going to weather the storm at the start and hopefully our fitness comes into it.
And it's not just the engine room where the battle will rage. The matchups across the backline will be just as tough. The clash between both sets of wingers could hold the key.
Big money is always a big challenge to come against with.
It's a great challenge first up. I don't think it gets much harder really than the Warriors.
Saturday's match will also be a special moment for McManus, who'll notch up game number 150.
Being able to play 150 games for the one club is certainly something I'll cherish. I love Newcastle. I love the people here and the community, and it's a real gem of a place. And to play, pull the jersey on for 150 games, it's going to be a proud moment.
And playing in a backline that couldn't find a spot for Sione Matautia has kept everyone on their toes.
It holds everyone accountable. It's certainly driven everyone through the pre-season to be working hard and not missing a beat.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
She's the three-time reigning MVP, but team honours have eluded Susie Batkovic in recent years. This season, her Townsville Fire hammered the Spirit to reach the decider, but Batkovic knows that counts for little on Sunday.
You obviously feel good about it, but in saying that, grand final's a totally different ballgame. The level and the intensity just goes right up.
The three-time Olympian says the ankle injury she suffered in the semi won't be a problem.
It's not holding me back, so there's no reason for me not to go full speed. I guess I had the week off and it was enough time to sort of get it mended enough to be right.
Closer to home, the Hunters women will look to maintain top spot in the Waratah League this weekend against Norths.
I know our defence is fabulous, and Pete, our coach, has just been really focused on that, and he's really happy with how we're going. So I think if we can settle into our offence and make some of those shots that we've been missing, we'll be unstoppable.
Jill Morgan believes the Hunters' great start is due to a mix of youth and experience.
There's some good young girls coming up, and they're sort of helping us out at training, making it a lot more competitive, making us work really, really hard.
Following the big win over Sutherland, the Hunters men will face the defending champion Bears. Having lost an American import, Newcastle has received a boost, with the news former NBL guard Josh Morgan is expected back from injury after Easter.
It's always disappointing to lose a strong player, especially an import, but to have Joey back on the court, his court presence makes a massive difference, and it was great to have him on the court last night at training.
And fresh from a win over the Central Coast, Maitland will host Hills Hornets on Sunday.
It's 2 weeks since the Four Corners program aired sickening footage of live piglets, rabbits and native animals being used to blood greyhounds for the track. Mark Pearson works for Animal Liberation and played a major role in the investigation, helping authorities catch perpetrators red-handed.
I think they're the worst examples of heartless, ruthless, brutally cruel people.
After a tip-off last year, he claims there's evidence this Lake Macquarie Council-owned track at Whitebridge has been used for live baiting in the past.
It wasn't very long we were on it and I first saw the clump of possum fur, and actually more possum fur as we walked along, and also skin. So it was clear that they were doing live baiting in this area.
Lake Macquarie Council responded saying Council is unaware of any inappropriate activity at the site. Brett Lazzarini is the chairman of the Gardens, where dogs are trialled using the correct method, and says the industry needed a shake-up.
I think it's something that had to happen and had to come out. You've got to move forward with the times. There's a lot of things in different sports that have always been hidden behind a back door, or skeletons in the closet, for want of a better word, but it's come to the fore and it needs sorting out and needs ironing out.
As to who knew what and how much in the Hunter Valley, opinions are divided.
I think the people who know are 100% of the greyhound industry, but probably about 75% of them are participating in one way or another.
I don't think it's rife locally, but it's definitely out there.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
The happiest of reunions for this group of strangers. Brad Ridge was out running near Bagnall's Beach on Christmas Eve last year when he suffered a heart attack. 2 cyclists saw him go down and called 000.
Just seen a guy leaning against the fence, he's a runner, and suddenly he just collapsed to the ground.
Okay, so are you with him right now?
He's going very blue.
Lifesavers Steve Wilson arrived within seconds and administered CPR. Incredibly, Westpac Rescue Helicopter CEO Steve Lee was driving past. He stopped to help too. Cardiac nurse Cheryl Gorey arrived next. Today joking about Mr Ridge's near-death experience and incredible luck.
It's like sort of saying, I think I'm going to organise my cast if I'm going to, have this occasion today. In Nelson Bay, I'm going to have ambulance officers, I'm going to have CPR experts, and a little cardiac nurse to sort of wander along as well.
Had everything going for you.
It certainly did, yeah. And having read about the stats since, it was very fortunate because I think about 90% of the people in that environment don't make it.
Yeah.
But Mr. Ridge does have a serious message.
The ability to know basic CPR, basic first aid, really can save lives.
Madeline McKell, NBN News.
So what we've launched today is the Eat Street, or the fast casual dining precinct. Aldi follows shortly upstairs. There's a new medical precinct upstairs.
When Ron Collins's mobility scooter was stolen from his garage on the weekend, he never dreamed he'd be receiving a new one so soon and free of charge. Worth almost $4,000, his new form of independence was donated by disability service provider Leapfrog Ability, who joined forces with Scooters and Mobility.
We heard about Ron's story on the news. Some of our staff saw it and it just seemed like the right thing to do.
Absolutely over the moon. We can't believe that within an hour of the story that 3 people had actually rang up and offered scooters to Ron.
How do you feel to get your scooter?
Good.
For 20 years, Ron had kept his scooter in the garage of his Newcastle apartment with no problems. So to suddenly be without a way of getting around has been stressful for the 68-year-old.
Ron actually hasn't left his premises since Saturday morning. So he's been housebound for 5 days and this is just like winning the lottery.
It's great to see him on it. I think he's pretty happy with it. So yeah, it'll be good to see him back on the streets again.
His first stop to buy a lock and chain to ensure this scooter stays put. Emma Murphy, NBN News.
It's the lyrics to this year's NRL theme song. And entertainment is what Phil Stubbins desperately wants from his side in a bid to appeal to fans having to choose between 2 footballing codes in the one city.
Look, we'll be doing all we can. We've got 2 big clubs here in Newcastle and, the NRL's starting shortly, but we can't control that.
1 win from 19 starts.
Yeah, it's not good reading, that's for sure.
And a mid-season clean-out has seen the club's faithful become disillusioned and crowds are down.
I don't think anyone's critical of the fans. I think they've been fantastic for the club. Time's going to be the healer for that.
And back to the job on the park, and today the coach named a new captain for tomorrow night's clash with Sydney FC, goalkeeper Ben Kennedy.
He had a fantastic game against Sydney last time and hopefully he can replicate that again.
New signing Andrew Lividich is also likely to play more of an attacking role high on the right against the Sky Blues.
He's a player now that I don't think there's any pressure on ourselves in putting him in there.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
Chris Lees was never expecting Protectionist to dominate its return to racing over 1,800 metres at Caulfield. The Newcastle trainer knows there's room for improvement.
Well, we've just got to get him to the right races. There's always a challenge in the autumn, as there's not a great number of races over his preferred journey, but a race like the BMW in about 4 weeks' time is going to suit him.
Lees wasn't as impressed with fellow Group 1 winner Lucia Valentina as she continues to work towards the Queen Elizabeth Stakes in Sydney on April 18. This afternoon, Lees was at Wyong preparing 3 runners for the $100,000 Provincial Championship qualifier.
I think they've got chances. I think Selectify is the obvious one. He's got Saturday form, which is a good lead into this type of race. The other 2 have just got place chances, and anything can happen in these type of races.
Selectify did enough to qualify for the $300,000 Provincial Championship final at Randwick on April 11.
I have no idea what to expect. Like it's great and daunting at the same time to like I've been to Dubai before and it's so hot and muggy over there, so we'll just see what comes. For years my dad had actually told me to bowl spin, so I finally relented and I was like, oh, I'll give it a go, and then it just flew and my career flew.